a dialogue with you if you have any questions while I'm doing it. So my first slide is the price of mistakes, and the biggest thing what I feel like is important is failure of success. What I mean is that you have a successful product, you have a successful game, or any product, and then you're not the one that is able to actually capitalize and make money on it. Understand? And I've seen that being time and time again. So let's quickly go through survival bias. Survival bias is basically people when they analyze, I don't know if you know the theory of survival bias. Have you heard of it? So basically there was a theorist, statistician, Abraham Wald. He was called by Royal Air Force and American Air Force, basically, how do we reduce the amount of losses that, you know, the airplanes were flying, bombing Germans, and then coming back. And so what he did is, and typically the military would see that airplane would be shot. So next time they would patch that place on the plane and try to protect it. He said, no, 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 no. Patch the things on the airplane which you don't see being shot. What it means is that the planes which you don't see the holes never came back from the field. Sure. And the planes that you see the holes, yeah, there are holes, but they still were able to make it back. So he was able, by basically actually fortifying things you don't see, to reduce the number of losses by like 30–40%. And so this is also a theory that is used in business. You always see a success, but you don't see the failure. So people will say, well, Steve Jobs didn't take shower, so he became successful. Why do I not take a shower? Maybe I'll become successful. That's kind of not the point. The point is to avoid those holes which you don't see from the battlefield. Unfortunately, people like myself are witness to the failures. So what I'll try to do is actually show you where you have a good game, but you have a bad business. And so basically the truth is when the failure becomes invisible, failure, not success. The difference between failure and success may also become invisible. So you have to inspect, quote unquote, undamaged portion of your stuff, okay? And so no ladies were hurt in the filming of that picture. So, and for those of you, this is from War Thunder, basically a game that is using. So quickly, copyright. The first thing that people fail is in copyright. So what is copyright? So it has to have 3 levels. Original, you have to write it. You have to be fixed. So when I talk, it's not copyrighted. When it's recorded, it's a copyrighted material. Minimal level of creativity. I have to basically be aware of some creativity. And so if you put monkeys and hitting on the keyboards, this is not really creativity. So when you do a telephone book of addresses, this is not creativity, that's mere compilation. If you try to seduce a lady and you put together certain songs one after another, there's a minimum level of creativity that will enable you to claim copyright, okay? So what does it protect? It protects code, graphics, characters, rules, language? No. If you created a new rules of the game or language, no, it's not protected. Ideas. Maybe, maybe not, but basically ideas themselves, like I have an idea. You know what my idea is? iPhone 18. That's not enough for me to claim the idea, right? You have to implement it. So basically the way that in the United States and in United Kingdom, there are no such thing as moral droit. Moral droit are so-called moral rights. Moral rights exist in France, in anybody that based on continental system, which means that when a developer develops a code or book or something else, he has certain rights that he cannot alienate. Basically, he cannot dispose of it. For instance, the rights are integrity of your work. So if you wrote a song, somebody else cannot damage that song. If you wrote a code, somebody else cannot change it. Obviously, in our industry, in IT, that makes no sense, because if I wrote the code and gave it to somebody, even though I'm the author, they still would be able to change it. So need to be careful. So what is the copyright? Copyright is actually arises automatically. As soon as you wrote a book, as soon as you wrote the code, it's automatically copyright protected. But why register? Because so registration, it's presumed that you're an author. It's proof and evidence. So basically, are you sure it's your code? Yes, I registered it. So it basically gives you a presumption. Payment of the legal fees. In the United States, if you registered a copyright for your code and somebody stole your code, you can claim up to $150,000 in so-called statutory damages. It's damages, but the damages go not to the government. It's like a fine, but it goes to basically a copyright owner. So up to 150,000. The biggest problems in copyright in any IT, whether it's gaming or others, it's so-called unintended co-owners. So when you hired somebody like a hungry student and he wrote a script for you and you didn't write a code. So let's assume, let me ask you a question. So if you wrote 99% of the code and somebody wrote 1% of the code, what is your division of basically ownership and the profit? No contract.
No contract?
Yeah.
I think there is nothing.
No, 50-50.
Is it?
Yeah. So basically, by default, all the participants share equally. So when McCartney...
1% of the code and the other?
99. And if you have no contract and you both are contributors to the same work, it's 50-50. So whether Paul McCartney or John Lennon wrote, yesterday, whether there's more contribution or less, they're 50-50. They don't say 49-51, no. It's like by default, it's 50-50.
The same thing happened with Facebook back then?
Yes, pretty much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Facebook or almost any developer that says, oh, here's a student, he needs to write a song. So the student comes in, writes it, and then 5-6 years later, he smarts up, hires a lawyer, says, oh, by the way, I have no contract, I'm co-owner. So it's one of the biggest problems that used to be basically in the industry, and it still prevails. The second problem is who owns derivatives. At times you do some development, and you license it to somebody, platform or something, and then you need to modify. So your customer comes in and says, oh, by the way, I need you to tweak it, put the green button instead of red. So your customer said, change it. You did change it. You change it on your software. Who owns the derivative? You or somebody who told you to change it? So that's a questionable, basically always theory, but you need to address it. You need to basically at least put it on a paper and say, listen, if you tell me to develop something from scratch, that's yours. But if you told me to fix my stuff for you and its derivative, and it's same button, but it's different color, it's mine. You like the red color, you're going to use that button exclusively, it's going to be yours, but it's my product, okay? That's important. So so basically, the other thing is so-called self-plagiarism, okay? What self-plagiarism means is a lot of companies, IT companies, develop something and they sell it, whether exclusively or assignment, particularly in the software development. Whether you're the developer or the one that orders the work, the problem is that you gave it to a developer, he did it, gave it to you, but he didn't forget it. He continues to think the same way and maybe develops the same code for somebody else. So it's called self-plagiarism, meaning that you already gave away your code, but you still replicate it again. Okay? So that's the biggest problem. And for those of you who like rock music, there's a very famous case for those who listen, CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, there is a song called Old Man Down the Road. And basically, because John Fogerty entered into a contract, gave away his rights to his songs, basically that song was also very famously copied, allegedly, from his previous songs. So the owner of the copyright claimed that he violated it. So it needs to be extremely careful in basically even replicating the code that you've done as long as you basically dispose of it. Old Man Down the Road, and the other song is called Jungle, the anti-war song. Just slipped my mind for a second, but I'll remember it in a second. So basically, authorship generally protects work of humans. However, the problem right now is that US Copyright Office is not going to register if the code is AI generated. Why? Because there is no originality. Basically, the law says that AI has no personality, hence there's no originality. So the biggest problem right now is selection and arrangement of AI-generated elements could be copyrightable. But if you just take an AI code and you use it, it's like open source. Because it's not you. You have no originality. And it's not really something that a level of creativity. However, here's the thing. So how do you avoid the problem? How do you avoid the problem of somebody using the essentially having, I mean, we all use AI. So the song is called Run Through the Jungle, for those who listens to that. And I apologize, being a rock fan, it's embarrassing for me to forget that, particularly considering that I'm going to his concert in 2 months. In any event, so how do you avoid AI-generated content and make it what? AI-assisted. Okay, and two different things. When it's AI-assisted, AI becomes a tool. If it's AI-generated, it's like an open source. And here's the thing, that basically if human author modifies AI-generated elements, you modify, okay, and modifications become copyrightable and not to base AI-generated content. So the human author's changes and then it becomes copyrightable. So it becomes actually something that you can protect as your property. So the thing is, that's a key issue for entire IT industry is whether you can actually own the code or not. If you don't own it, it's useless. You can't make money off of it. So here's another, basically, the rule. The rule states right now, AI-generated code, not in China. In China, they actually did register a character that is fully AI-generated, and they copyrighted it. In the United States, if it's AI-generated code, it's not copyrightable. Again, it's not yours. That's the whole thing, okay? We're talking about capitalism, not socialism. It's not copyrightable unless there is a sufficient human authorship. What is sufficient human ownership? Nobody knows. But here is a good example that I'll show you. What the hell does this mean? All right. Do you know what it is? Exactly, yeah. A can that is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I saw this design before. But it's famous, it's as a trend, but I don't
It's
know.
not a design, it's actually a painting.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Andy Warhol. You know Warhol, right? So here's the thing. You've seen that, right? That's Andy Warhol. So there is a case recently that finished, and Andy Warhol was dead by the time. So here's the thing. So this one is, you know who it is, right? Prince. So a photographer by the name of Goldsmith took a picture, and this is the picture of Prince. So he used level of creativity, you know, certain angles, certain qualities, and he made the picture. Good picture, right? I don't like that kind of music, but, you know, good picture. Andy Warhol took that picture and made it into this. Okay? So this is the original, and is this the original or is it derivative? So let me have your hand. So, all right, we have two things, right? Sufficient human addition, contribution. So raise your hand who thinks that painting or coloring is not sufficient human ownership. Can you raise your hand, please? Is not. Not sufficient to make it a separated copyrighted work. So if this derivative of this, or is this the new one?
It looks like derivative.
Okay, derivative. Who thinks it's not derivative? So you think it's not derivative.
It was created like without using the basic picture, yes?
It was.
He
He literally took the original picture and painted it. It's the same as with this one. This is not his picture.
okay.
He took the picture of Marilyn Monroe and painted it.
He took picture and painted
Yeah,
his picture
yeah,
using
yeah, without giving royalties to the original software developer. Understand, right? So so he took that picture, painted it, and sold it to the same journal, same magazine. And what did he say to Goldsmith? Go pound sand. You know what go pound sand in English means? No? Go and jump in the lake. Go yourself. Basically, so he didn't really pay me anything. Obviously, Goldsmith said, what the hell? You know, you took my picture, you painted it, and it's my picture. Yeah, you put this. So let's make a vote again. Who thinks that Warhol is right, meaning that he doesn't have to pay the original painter? So you think no. So everybody thinks that he has to pay to original painter, right? No. So
That was the correct answer.
all right, the thing is there's no correct answer, but there's an answer that was given by Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court said that this was not sufficient human contribution. So basically, Supreme Court said that Andy Warhol is a great salesman, but he's not a developer. So basically, what they said is that this is a derivative of that. Okay, so just painting something is not a sufficient human ownership. And what it means is right now, when you do an AI generated and you just painted the colors within, it's not sufficient. So that gives you essentially a guidance as to you have to have some. I don't fully disagree, and I somewhat like Andy Warhol, but at the same time, Goldsmith to me was the original creator. And if Andy Warhol did the painting, he probably should have paid something to the original, basically, author. But Supreme Court, after 10 years of litigation, said that Andy Warhol is a good salesman, not a good artist, which is, after billions of dollars of art being sold by Andy Warhol, it's kind of a little bit of a strange conclusion. But right now, all the litigation is going to be around whether or not AI-generated code is yours because you put prompts, you change it, you guided it, you kept changing. So to me, what I'm doing right now is I'm helping companies to actually document it. So I know the developers hate it because it adds more work to them. But I basically say, listen, if you just put AI, you keep putting prompts and you deleted it, it's not yours. So in order for you to claim ownership, you need to document the fact that, oh, I didn't like the red color, I wanted purple, I wanted green, I wanted this. So in the same way, listen, you guys use it in your profession, I use it in mine, but I can't just put stuff in illegal without analyzing. I'm sure most developers as well. However, you need to be able to document it. And that's one of the biggest issues in copyright right now. So was it transformative? Transformative? The answer is no. Sufficient human contribution. So the Supreme Court said no, okay? So next time you see paintings of Andy Warhol, just recognize that Supreme Court of the United States doesn't think he's an artist, okay? All right, second, any problems, any questions about copyrights?
But what is the main issue about, you told that developers don't like to document it in a way, but documentation, as I understand, and maybe you corrected me, that is the way to say government that it is sufficient.
Yes.
Prompts, developers need to save prompts and the way of
Correct.
code arises
Correct.
to
Correct. So basically, my favorite business expression is that in order to survive, you don't have to run faster than the wolf. You just have to run faster than the slowest deer. So my question is just don't be the slowest deer. So the problem is that a lot of developers simply have no arguments. Right now we get a feedback from copyright office say, that looks like AI generated. We're like, no, look, we did this, we did prompts, we did this. So it's really, unfortunately law, even though it's an IT law, it's not a really, as we found in your vote, right? You differed in your opinion. It's not an exact science. So it's a matter of degrees. So your question is absolutely correct. But the problem is that you have to have something you could prove and make it a jury question. If you have nothing to prove. You're only saying, oh, I used it. I used prompts, I changed. So it's not really quantity of the code, it's the quality. So the fixed and your originality and things that you contributed, that's what's important, okay? So the second level of problems is, and I like the discussion, we probably not gonna be covering the whole slew of mistakes because it will probably take me about 2 weeks. But I'll go over most important things, and those who is interested, I'll happy to first of all share the video, but also happy to share my presentation. So the second one is trademarks. So copyright, it must, in order for you to violate somebody's copyright, you must have known about the copyright. So copyright, somebody copied the code. If two guys sitting in two different basements wrote the same code, no copyright violation. There has to be some viewing and copying. In trademark, not true. If you never heard of Google, if you never heard of Adidas and you put Abibas, or you put Google with 3 O's, you're still violating trademarks. So that's why trademarks extremely important, and basically there are 2 ways to do trademark. One is use. So once you created a game, you released it, it's actually use, okay? So use in commerce. However, United States system allows you, if you came up with a game name, but you haven't used it yet, you haven't released the game, you can actually reserve that name for a few years. Initially for a year, you can extend it up to 3 years. So you came up with a great idea, but your developers are too slow. That's the issue. So, trademark, unfortunately, is a concept of geographical and market location. What it means is that you could have Apple, you could have Apple Vacations. And these are 2 different companies, even though the same trademark. If somebody does Apple airplanes or other stuff, they might not be violatable. However, if you're in the same niche, then you can't do it. So quickly, I'll go over, and I have an article I'm happy to share with you, types of trademarks, okay? So generic. Generic is you released a game and you call it match 3. You can't call it match 3 because everybody else needs to use it. So the trademark itself you can't sell beer and call it beer, okay? You can't sell cars and call it cars. So descriptive. Descriptive is so-called merely descriptive. What it means is that good beer, fastest match 3, or best strategy game. So anything that is descriptive also unprotected because everybody else needs to use it. You can't basically say car and then deprive everybody from using the word car. That's the whole point. So you can't do generic, you can't do descriptive. So what do? You do suggestive. So what is suggestive? Suggestive essentially is a mark. For those of you who remember what CD is, there used to be basically a program called narrow CD-ROM, right? Burning. So narrow burned ROM, and narrow burning CD-ROM. So that's a suggestion that you make. Or suggestive is, let's say, penguin for Penguin for a refrigerator. Penguin, ice, cold, refrigerator, okay? So arbitrary and fanciful. So what's arbitrary? Arbitrary is you took the word, has nothing to do with your game or your product. You say Bluetooth. I mean, you can't even say what it is, right? But it's real words, but it has nothing to do with your product. And fanciful is a made-up words. Axon, Kodak, something, anything. So, however, I think the best, and that's kind of invention of me, the word fangestive. So what is fangestive? Fangestive is suggestive, but at the same time fanciful. It's a made-up word, but you could kind of gather as to, you're thinking as to what this really means. And I'll give you examples of that. So quickly, why do you do registration? Registration because confusing is similar. So again, if you register the mark or use the mark, if it's really similar to somebody else, you could basically take it off the Apple or Google Play or Steam. Registration, easy proof to ownership. You could use it as a shield as well as a sword. And you could do demand a cease and desist letter to Google, Facebook, others. Why? Because if you register and they see you registered, they react so much quicker. Why? Because if they don't, they become complicit. So they become basically an assistant in crime, and they react so much faster. Also, if you register trademark and you prove that they sold, let's say, of that game, let's say for $1 million, so you can actually ask for treble damages. Treble means multiply by 3. You sold $1 million of your games under my name, you give me $3 million for that. So that's a really worthy investment, right? So, and you get your attorney's fees. As you know, attorneys, fortunately for me, unfortunately for you, are expensive. But if you have a registered trademark, you will be entitled to legal fees in that sense. That's why Google reacts, because if they don't, they can become complicit. So quickly, fangestive. Sorry, we invented the term. It's not a copyrightable invention, but I still take credit for it. So beachorella. Beach and umbrella, right? So you know what it is, but it's a made-up word. That's the best type of trademark possibly. Beetles. So it's not your bugs, but it's a beat. So Beatles, it suggests that something to do with beat, with rhythm, right? There's actually a new band called Volbeat. So volume and again beat. It's a little bit more heavier, and you know where I'm leaning toward, but it's awesome name for a band. Sherp. So sherp is non-existent word because there's a word Sherpa, right? But so sherp has something to do with you going through things that other people won't be able to. So, and that's my favorite, even though I don't cook, meter. But it spells like meat, but sounds like measuring. So it's actually a point and highly advised to men to deceive their girlfriends and wives that they're able to cook, because it measures the temperature of the meat. So again, meter, right? How it sounds, but how it spells different. So, and diligence. So diligence is, due diligence, but doing deals and diligence kind of suggests as to what is done. And of course, ways, right? Sounds like roads, but it's spelled and sounds a little bit different. So these are, kudos to whoever. These are all awesomely protected, okay? And reflects the mind of the consumer. So this is Sherp. For those of you never seen that, it's about $140,000. Proud to be their lawyer. And this is my favorite product, the meter with an application. So you stick that into the meat, and whether it's a duck or beef or pork, whatever, it will cook well and works even with a person like me who has no idea how to cook. All right, quickly, let me go over things that I think is important. inception of the companies, I basically don't rely that much on the forms. Forms are basically, it's like there's an expression in Russian, soup is topora. So, the soup from an axe. Put an axe in there, well, there's no salt, there's no sugar, oh, there's no potato. So it's actually, you're doing it yourself. So when we talk about the fallen airplanes, all these forms, particularly right now with GPT generated, is really something that needs to be extremely carefully considered using. So make sure that you provide and comply with corporate formalities, liability of officers and directors. One of the persons that recently contacted our company, they elected their board of directors for 100 years. And then, of course, there would be complaints when the investors come in and say, what the hell is that? We want us to be on the board. It's like, well, maybe you could wait 100 years and 5 months. Again, there are a lot of things that are done, as you know, in your profession, in development, that you can't just rely on forms or AI generation. And so let me quickly go over the things that SHA relation with partners. That's one of the biggest failures of the companies that have good products, is basically squibbles between the shareholders. So basically, they can't share profits, or they can't divide it, and it's the biggest thing that basically, in my view, even though it's not required by law, not having a shareholder agreement is just plain stupid. Unfortunately, so two aspects: management. So sometimes you have like 51-49, but you say, listen, but really, if you enter a contract over $60,000, let's have 70% of shareholders approve it. So it's always, management is somewhat different from default rules. And the second is somebody is, divorced. Wife takes half of the shares. So you end up right now dealing not with your partner, not even with his wife, but with his former mother-in-law, right? And actual example in my case, literally, wife took half of the shares, but wife didn't want to do anything, so my client had to deal with mother-in-law, former mother-in-law, and that's just. But if you have a shareholder agreement, you say, listen, if you lose your shares, if there's divorce, if they're for sale, the other partners would be able to get it. Out of everything we do, probably shareholder agreement is kind of the most complicated product, simply because it reflects much of the psychology as much as the law and best practices. So basically, there are special provisions, meaning restrictive covenants, like don't sell shares to anyone. Major action, which is supermajority. Vesting, somebody, true example. 4 founders, one founder became Buddhist and went, to become a monk for a year or two. How do you take out his shares or reduce at least his participation? If you don't have shareholder, you can't. So he came back and said, well, screw that monkship, I'm back. It's like, after 2 years we work and you came back? No, that doesn't work. So make sure that there are things, again, somebody like myself would witness other tragedies, so you don't have to live through them. I already, look at my old gray hair, that's all the advices that, my clients didn't follow. So, but again, we are accumulating these failures, enable to you not to repeat them. Drag along, tag along, right of first refusal. Not going to confuse you with a lot of technicalities, but imagine you have no shareholder agreement, and your partner has 1% of shares, and then you sell in the company for $10 million. Okay, so your partner is entitled to $100,000. So your partner comes in and says, no, I want $2 million, which is 20% more, 20 times more than his percentage. Or I'm not going to sell my 100 shares. And let's say Google or somebody else wants to buy the company, and the Google says, I don't need 99%, I need 100%. So you are at the choice whether to rip yourself and or other shareholders and give that jerk his 2 million, or fail the deal. And so 20 is an extreme, but the actual case that we handled afterwards, when shareholder received 17 times more than his actual share. And that's without shareholder agreement. So, but if you have a drag-along, essentially how drag-along works, if we agree to sell the company below $10 million, then you need 90% of the vote. If we sell more than $10 million, then 60% or 51%. And for those of you who speak Russian, remember expression «Шура, сколько вам нужно для полного счастья?» That's, you know, how much do you need for the full happiness? And he says, $10 million. Okay, $10 million, so you get 1 million or 100,000, that's your happiness. Anything above your happiness, you're not participating. We'll just give it to you. And that's one of the key issues. Again, disasters, which includes divorce, which I avoided, thank God, bankruptcy, and so-called buzz factor. So for those who don't know what buzz factor is, in Russian it means «Аннушка разлила масло». Помните, да? So something happens to your shareholder. What happens afterwards? Do you deal with his wife? Can you buy the share? Do you deal with, you know, heirs? And very carefully, non-compete. So non-compete, for those of you who are fans of Silicon Valley series, you know that non-compete are virtually not enforceable in California. But among shareholders, particularly existing shareholders, yes, you can enforce. And that's the issue, because if you have your partner and you divorced and you had a pizza parlor, and then your partner leaves and basically says, okay, and gets the same pizza across the road, then you lost the value of the business. So carefully non-solicit. So non-solicited, meaning that you left the company or somebody left and continues to solicit the same customers, suppliers, or employees. And that's important. So if somebody left the company voluntarily, somebody left the company because he was fired, that's all, you know, problematic. That's all issues that need to be addressed. I want to make sure we have a couple of minutes for questions, and let me quickly go over, I think, an aspect that is a pain almost in every business. And I called it red, yellow, and green. So what is red? Red means you wrote the code and it's yours. Nobody's supposed to take it away. Nobody's supposed to basically do anything with it. You license it. So it's your code. Red light, stop, okay? What is yellow? Green. Green means custom development. Somebody comes to you and says, develop it from scratch. Here's an SOW, develop. So green, it's full speed ahead. It's yours. You transfer it. And then yellow. What is it that when it's a custom developed, but it's based on your IT? That's kind of the middle ground. Again, it's the modification of your code for purposes of your client. Be it a game, be it a platform, almost in any product or niche, it exists. So we see a lot of platforms, somebody comes in and says, oh, I need you to modify this. So when you modify your own stuff, but you did it at somebody else's instructions, whose is it? Is it whose originality? Is it somebody that orders the work or the one that actually develops it? So the problem is that developer can use it for other clients. That's my approach. So if you just told me to modify my own product, no, that's mine. If you get really, really, really good idea, I can modify it for you and you're going to use it exclusively. But I should be able to use something like that and derivative for others. That's my example of John Fogerty, because he basically in 1969, they released an album that was completely, you know, everybody knows all the songs, and Have You Ever Seen the Rain Coming Down, Sunny Day, and others. But the band was so poor that they wrote such terrible contract. For 15 years, he didn't write one song. So he basically he did not enable the publisher to make money at the expense of him not making anything. And that's like the worst possible example of copyright. Like signing the contract that, imagine, like you wrote such a bad contract for publisher, for 15 years you didn't release anything. And when you released the first song, you actually copied your previous, allegedly. So the problem is that if you don't write anything, what is the default rule? So when you modify your own code, but at somebody else's instruction, is it yours or is it derivative? Is it yours? Can you raise your hand? Is it derivative and belongs to the party that ordered? Who thinks that? So, and the default rule is it's somebody else's. So if they give you instruction, it becomes virtually almost a work for hire, even though it might be missing some words. But remember, if it's green, it's a work for hire. It basically belongs to the person that ordered the work. So that's the biggest pain. Here's an example. I'll give you an example. Somebody develops a platform for, let's say, patients management, and then gives it to the client. The client asks it to modify. You modified it, you gave it to them. But then that developer wants to do management system for somebody else. But you can't, because you already gave it away to this guy. And that's the issue, because the developers are going to continue to reuse at least some of the codes. So if silent, that's the problem. So to me, these are kind of main issues that you have to be aware of and at least think about it. Otherwise, it's very critical that you think through those issues. And I'm happy to answer your questions now, or feel free to contact me later on at a party. Before I had a couple drinks, I would be able to respond professionally. Otherwise, I'll probably just joke. But and also happy to respond to your questions in any of the Telegram, WhatsApp. And one of the things we do is when we plan something with clients, we don't charge, unlike most lawyers. And I don't know if on that topic there's a little joke. A doctor stands at the party and everybody is like, oh, it hurts here, what do I do? So the doctor is like unable to enjoy himself, he answers all the questions. And then he sees a lawyer, stands there like no person comes to him. So he comes to the lawyer, says like, what the hell? Like everybody is just, around me asking questions, I can't even do anything. And the lawyer says, listen, if they feel free to ask me any questions, but if they do, I'll send them a bill next morning. And so doctor comes home and next morning he receives a bill. So any questions? Trademarks, copyrights, derivative work, Warhol, anything? So hopefully it was entertaining enough, and hopefully I try to raise some issues that you guys will be addressing during your business. And what do you think in your business, anybody, maybe volunteer, you feel like out of the things that we discussed today is the most sensitive, painful part in your business?
I think AI is the most interesting, painful, and wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful, but for the business, we still don't know how to use it.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, I every time, like, I'm rolling my eyes when I get comments to my agreement from a client, and the client like, GPG said that you need to do this provision. It's like, you idiot, I would have put that provision for on the other side. I'm presenting you, asshole. Yeah, but I agree, AI is important, and it's certainly something that in your profession, I think, you're leading so much further ahead than the law and legislature and so that I think the practice of it kind of supersedes almost what we do. And it's up to us to protect you using your AI products. I mean, if you look at cinema, right? Let's say, what is it, 8 years ago? It was the movie Avatar. I mean, there is nothing that a human did there, right? Everything was CGI. But nobody would say that, oh, I can just copy Avatar movie and do it, right? It was fully copyrightable. So CGI is essentially a tool. So our basically purpose of this exercise is to make sure that we treat AI as a tool. Because if it's not a tool, if it's a Terminator, a Skynet, then we're all screwed, and they will find out where John lives. So John Connor, right? For those of you who remember the movie. So I completely agree with you. AI is fascinating to me as well. And I think this is going to be the battleground. And also battleground, not just development. Because again, the biggest thing is make sure it's your property, not open source. Because open source and AI generated code essentially the same. They are contagious. But if it's AI assisted, then it's your property. And make sure that you at least exercise some diligence, I should say, and basically you're able to measure and prove and at least manage and control. Like a lot of companies right now, no code should be AI generated, or show us which code is AI generated. But so you need to be able to at least instill discipline in your developers that they manage the process, they fix the stuff that is important or less important. And again, it's not about quantity, okay? It's not about the size of the code. It's really about the contribution, quality, and essentially creativity. So just be aware of that. And hopefully, I'll be invited again. No? And maybe in a year, I'll say something different. But right now, the law lags behind. So it's up to you, the players in that game and the players in the industry to push it forward and make sure you kind of capitalize on that. And on that note, if there are no more questions, I'll probably wrap it up.